Picture this, a man in his 50s, standing in a dimly lit garage in Queens, New York on a chilling Saturday morning. Coffee gone cold on the workbench, a half-disassembled Toyota Supra Mark IV in front of him. His phone has 17 unread messages. His back hurts, he hasn't slept more than 5 hours. And yet, he isn't stopping. He isn't even thinking about stopping. His hands are moving like they know exactly what to do, even when his mind is somewhere else entirely. His neighbors think he's lost it. His coworkers don't get it. But if you asked him why he does this, he wouldn't reach for a simple answer, because there isn't one. What is actually happening inside the mind of someone who modifies a Japanese classic car? What makes a grown adult reroute their finances, their weekends, their entire emotional energy toward a machine that was built decades before social media existed? And why, no matter how long they've been doing it, do they never stop? Most people assume it's about the car. It isn't. Not really. Psychologists who study consumer behavior have long understood that humans don't buy or build things purely for function. We build things that tell the world, and more importantly ourselves, who we are. When someone chooses to pour their time into a Nissan Skyline GTR R34 instead of buying something newer and easier, they aren't making a mechanical decision. They're making an identity statement. They're saying they value depth over convenience, authenticity over appearance, and substance over status symbols that anyone with a credit card can access. This is what researchers call identity economics, and it explains why the choice of car is never just a choice of car. But where does this identity come from? That's where it gets fascinating. Close your eyes for a second and think back. If you grew up in the 90s or early 2000s, there was a specific moment. Maybe it was sitting cross-legged on a carpet with a controller in your hands, pushing a Toyota AE86 through a mountain pass in a video game. Or watching a Supra disappear into the night in a movie theater when something inside you shifted. Psychologists call this imprinting. During adolescence, the brain is in a critical developmental window where experiences don't just entertain, they architect your values.
Those weren't just games and movies. They were the blueprints that hardwired what cool looks like, what dedication feels like, and what's worth pursuing. Decades later, that same person is standing in a garage at midnight with grease on their hands, and they couldn't fully explain why it feels so right. But now, you're beginning to understand. Now, here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. For a very long time, these cars were simply out of reach. In the United States, federal importation laws made vehicles under 25 years old nearly impossible to bring in legally, which meant an R34 Skyline was not just rare, it was forbidden. Think about what that does to desire. A teenager in Ohio who saw that car on a screen couldn't walk into a dealership and buy one. He could only watch, research, and want. In Australia, strict modification compliance laws meant that building certain Japanese classics to their full potential required navigating a bureaucratic maze that could take years. In the United Kingdom, insurance companies routinely refused to cover heavily modified Japanese imports, making ownership feel like a battle against the system itself. In Canada, gray market imports came with legal gray areas that made every purchase feel like a calculated risk. In Ireland, parts had to be ordered from Japan and could take months to arrive, each delivery feeling like Christmas morning for a grown adult. Psychological research is unambiguous on this point. Restrictions don't kill desire, they amplify it. When something is withheld, the brain assigns it mythological value. These cars weren't just machines, they became symbols of something unattainable, and then, slowly, achingly, attainable. And that journey from wanting to having rewires how deeply a person bonds with the thing they finally hold. Liam from Dublin, Ireland. He worked 2 jobs for 3 years, warehouse shifts during the day and bar work on weekends to fund the import and build of a Mazda RX-7. But here's what most people don't know about Liam. His family moved 11 times before he turned 18. Different cities, different schools, different faces. Nothing stayed constant. Nothing except the idea of that car. Julian Rotter, a psychologist who developed the concept of locus of control, described how humans fundamentally need to feel that their actions have consequences, that they hold some power over their own lives. For Liam, a world that kept uprooting him found its counterweight in a machine he could control completely. Every bolt he tightened was a vote for stability. Every modification was proof that something in his world would stay exactly where he put it. The car didn't just give him a hobby, it gave him ground to stand on.
And then there's the world these builders inhabit today. It isn't just garages and car meets anymore. It's Instagram builds with hundreds of thousands of followers. It's YouTube channels where a single engine reveal gets more views than most television shows. It's track days where performance is measured, recorded, and shared in real time. The modern Japanese classic car community operates at the intersection of passion and visibility, where the quality of your build determines your social standing and your authenticity determines your respect. This isn't vanity. It's a sophisticated social ecosystem where image, performance, and community recognition function as currency. And unlike mainstream luxury culture where status is purchased, here it is earned, slowly, with knowledge and sacrifice and genuine obsession. This is also where the emotional machinery beneath the surface becomes impossible to ignore. The people who never stop modifying aren't chasing perfection, they're chasing something older and more personal. Some are proving wrong the family member who once called it a waste of time. Some are exercising control in a life where everything else feels unpredictable. Some are chasing a second chance at a dream that circumstances once made impossible. Albert Bandura, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, developed self-efficacy theory, which describes the human need to believe in one's own ability to achieve. Every time someone successfully rebuilds a carburetor, every time an engine turns over after weeks of work, every time a lap time drops by half a second, that belief gets stronger. The car becomes a mirror that reflects back a version of themselves they are proud of. Matthew is a farmer from rural Queensland, Australia. He restores Japanese classics in the shed behind his property, usually with his teenage son beside him. They don't always talk much. They pass tools, they argue gently about torque specs, they drink tea when the sun goes down, and in those quiet hours, something happens between them that couldn't happen over a dinner table or a phone screen. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the psychologist who defined flow state, described it as the condition where a person is so absorbed in meaningful activity that time dissolves and self-consciousness disappears. Matthew and his son enter that state together. The car becomes the space where real conversations happen, where a father and son build not just an engine, but a relationship that will outlast both of them. This is what the symbolic self-completion theory explains so precisely. When a person feels that a part of their identity is incomplete or unrecognized, they pursue objects and activities that fill that gap. The modified Japanese classic is never just a car. It is a declaration. It is a chapter in a story a person is writing about who they are and who they refuse to stop becoming. The self-determination theory identifies 3 core human needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. The modification culture satisfies all 3 simultaneously. You make your own choices about your build, you develop real, tangible skills, and you belong to a community that understands you in ways that casual acquaintances never could. And maybe that's the answer to the question on that thumbnail that made you click. Why do they never stop? Because stopping would mean the pursuit ends, and it is the pursuit itself, the next modification, the next car meet, the next problem to solve, that keeps the dopamine flowing and the meaning alive. Viktor Frankl wrote that the human being's deepest need is not pleasure or power, but meaning. For the man in Queens with cold coffee and a super that won't quit. For Liam, who built stability with his own hands. For Matthew and his son passing tools in the fading Queensland light. The car is meaning made mechanical. And you don't stop when you've found that. You go deeper.